Welcome to Page vs. Screen, where I pit screen adaptations of books against their source material to see which is better, what's on the page, or what's on the screen. Today's match, and in fact, first one ever, is Oliver Twist by Charles Dickens. The format is simple. I tell you about what's been cut, what's been changed, and some general thoughts on each screen piece that I've watched before I tell you which adaptations are the best, worst, and who indeed did it better, the page or the screen. I'm sure most people have heard.
Please, sir, I want some more.
But in case you haven't read Dickens' tale before, or just need a refresher, here's as much of all 53 chapters that I can fit into 3 minutes or less. Oliver Twist is an orphan who runs away from his crappy circumstances at a workhouse and then undertakes apprenticeship at about 9 or 10 years old. He travels to London and is brought by the Artful Dodger to a group of thieves run by a man named Fagin, is wrongly arrested while out with some of the boys, then exonerated. While in court, he's sick, and the man he was accused of stealing from, Mr. Brownlow, takes him home and takes care of him. He's kidnapped back by the thieves, sent with some of them, including a man named Sykes, to go off and rob a house. Ollie gets shot during the robbery and is left for dead. He's taken care of by the women that live there, the Maylies, their doctor friend, Losburn, and the house staff. Ollie is living the best life he has ever led. Meanwhile, Fagin tells a mysterious man named Monks, who gets pissed because the deal was that Ollie was to become a criminal, and back at the workhouse, an old woman dies after giving the long-widowed Corny some information, and an officious ass named Bumble proposes and marries her. This is important later, I promise. Ollie is sad and is taken to see Brownlow back in London, but he's off traveling and nobody knows exactly when he'll be back. Rose Maylie, the niece of Mrs. Maylie, gets sick, and Mrs. Maylie's son Harry comes to visit. He ends up proposing, and Rose rejects him. And Ollie gets freaked out because he sees some people spying on him through the window. Again, important. Monks meet with the Bumbles, whose relationship can only be described as... and they sell him a locket that once belonged to Ollie's mom. Nancy, one of the thieves, overhears Monks and Fagin plotting against Ollie. She took a shine to the boy, and so goes off to warn Rose and is convinced to meet her later to give more details. Noah, a guy from the undertaker's shop, arrives in London. Fagin brings him into the fold. Dodger is unfortunately arrested and sent away. Fagin has Noah follow Nancy to her meeting with Rose and Brownlow, who has returned back from his travels, where she tells the pair about Monks, but refuses to peach on any of the others because of more...
toxic love.
Fagin and Noah tell Sykes, Nancy's boyfriend, and he kills her. Brownlow finds Monks, and it turns out Monks is Ollie's greedy older brother who wants Ollie's share of the inheritance, which Ollie only gets if he's been a good, virtuous person. After killing Nancy, Sykes did run away, but he came back. He's ratted out and dies during his escape attempt. Ollie is taken back to his birth town. They meet the Bumbles, who admit to everything that went down between them and Monks. See, told you it was important. It's also revealed that Rose is actually Ollie's mom's sister, and so therefore his aunt. Fagin has been arrested and sent to be executed. Ollie and Brownlow visit him, and while he has moments of lucidity, he has lost it. Harry proposes to Rose again, and she accepts. Brownlow adopts Ollie, and they live near the newlyweds. Losburn joins them in the village. It's happiness all around, except for the Bumbles, who end up poor and in a workhouse, and Monks, who goes to America, gets arrested, and dies in an American prison. So now the question is, how do the at least 25 adaptations of Oliver Twist hold up?
What? What?
Don't worry, I can only find 9, and this video is about 30-ish minutes, so that's what we're looking at today. The first one is from either 1909 or 1912. One site says 1 year, while another site says the other year for the same video, so I'm not 100% sure, but either way, it's one of the earliest known adaptations. What fell to the cutting room floor? Well, this version is only 15 minutes long, so a lot. Sourberry, who is the Undertaker, all that's gone, so Noah's stuff later is cut. Everything with Monks and possibly the Maylies, and so therefore Harry, have also been cut. Though whether Rose is included or not, Harry is always cut, so I'm not bringing him up again. He can just go away. There were some changes made. Fagin follows Nancy, not Noah, because again, you know. Dodger is supposed to be around Ollie's age, but does this look like a boy around 9 or 10 years old? Like, no. Since overall the Maylie stuff is cut, they steal from Brownlow's, which seems to be the standard when this happens, and we don't see Sykes die. In this, they did a clever thing where they put up scene titles like this, and then the following bit was what was described in the card. However, even that was, with that, it was still kind of difficult to follow some of it. I get it, film was precious then, and the oldest live-action film we have is from 1886, so this tech was really new to a lot of people and not easily accessible, but you can still tell a cohesive story with little questions for the audience in 15 minutes. This version didn't feel cohesive. Like, Bumble and Corny's little flirty flirt scene is concluded, but they're not seen before or after that. It may not have been long, but since film and therefore time was precious, why include it at all? Like, the scene had a title card and everything. It made no sense. Also, when Fagin is in prison, his cell is supposed to be dark and dank, but it's bright and open. But with this, I do get why. It was such a newer medium that I would be surprised if the tech existed to make it look even a little bit good on screen to how it was supposed to be from the page. So that's forgivable. It did hit the major plot points of Ollie's main storyline, so I will give them that. Next up, we have the 1922 version. It was really accurate to the book, and well done. As far as the main storyline goes, they didn't cut out too much that was major, just some details like Brownlow's friendship with Ollie's dad, and Rose being Ollie's aunt, the Bumbles actually selling the locket. There is a character, Mrs. Mann, who runs the farmhouse orphanage place that Ollie first lives, and she's fully taken over by Mrs. Corny's character. They just melt them. This is the usual thing that happens, and it kind of bugs me because they are separate people that run different places, but whatever. In the book, there's a part where Fagin goes to beat Ollie and Nancy stops him. I did say she took a shine to him, but here Sykes goes to beat him instead, which just adds to the asshole nature of Sykes. And of course, the big change. Ollie actively tries to stop the robbery at the Maley residence, and Sykes shoots him. In the book, he had been threatened with a gun by Sykes, and so even though he doesn't want to, he goes along with things because, well, he doesn't want to get shot. But in the end, one of the house staff catches him and shoots him instead. This version, being another silent film, also used title card-esque things, but instead of Ollie becomes an orphan, it gave bits of dialogue or introduced characters with bits of info about them. And it includes the name of the actor that played the character. They didn't seem to have credits in the same way we do now, at least not in this film, so I thought that was really neat. This looks like the description of The Undertaker, but it's not. It's Monk's. He's supposed to have a birthmark on his face. Where's his telltale birthmark? Also, he's so old in this version. Like, I figured he'd be more like 30-ish at most, but this guy looks way older. But, yes, Dodger is a kid in this one. And he also seems to have more heart. This is just after Ollie is taken back to Fagin's from Brownlow's, and he looks really sad for Ollie. And, he's really just like, meh, whatever. One thing that made me laugh was right at the end. Ollie does this little, Superman pose. I know it's about a decade or so too early for Superman, but I was sitting there wondering, come on, kid, where's your cape? Come on, where is it? Let's see it. It was cute. Made me laugh. But yeah, I do have to say, Ollie, Nancy, and Dodger were great in this version. If you've never watched a silent film before, it wouldn't be a bad thing to start with this one. 1933. Hello, talkies. We have officially left the silent film era. Here, Monks is cut out. Same with the Sourberry storyline. Both in the trash heap. A lot of the changes, though, were annoying. There was no reason given for, please, sir, I want some more. And I didn't think it would bug me, but it's been festering between watching it and filming this, and it does. Because in the book, the kids draw straws to see who'll ask, because one kid is just going crazy and threatening cannibalism. And his entire life, Ollie has been treated poorly, given the barest minimums, told he's not worth much more than what he's given. Why would he suddenly think that he's gonna get more just by asking? It just didn't make sense to anything. Also, they could clearly hire kids. So why are Dodger and Bates adults? Then they throw another thief, Tom Chitling, into the scene just before Sykes tries to get away from being arrested, and they remove Bates, who's supposed to be there, and so Dodger calls for help. But, like, why randomly throw in Chitling? You could have had Bates, Crackit, and Dodger instead, even though Dodger isn't there because he's already technically been arrested at this point in the book. But, like, they're all characters that have been introduced. And Chitling, he does nothing in the scene. He does nothing for it. So there was no point to adding a character we haven't seen before this late in the movie. Like, they were trying to be so accurate to the book in most instances, but then they fucked around with some things in the dumbest ways. Like, I don't understand. The family dynamics are different too. This part isn't dumb. It does make sense within this version. Brownlow is Rose's uncle, and he is Ollie's grandfather, which more on this later. But otherwise, the Maley stuff is cut and the robberies of Brownlow's. So, okay, that's fine. But this one was so bad. I mean, at least it was a cohesive story that was easy to follow, but it was just like, and the kid who played Ollie was constantly looking at the camera and the directors throughout. Like, the occasional one is fine, it's a kid, but, like, constantly, it was just like, The biggest complaint I have about this one, though, is that there is no payoff. We don't see anybody explain to Ollie about his family. This is one of the aspects they fucked with, but they took the time and care to set it up, even without monks being included. Like, there was the portrait, the locket, Brownlow noticing something familiar in Ollie, but then Ollie doesn't learn the truth. Like, we don't get that satisfaction. If you're gonna set us up, like, give us the payoff. I will say, the Madness of Fagin scene was just... it was so well done. It was a shining moment in an otherwise turd of a movie. So, Fagin was great. Like, he was great all throughout. Ollie wasn't, but, I don't know, he was cute. Nancy was okay, but Fagin's gang, most of them came across as idiots. It pissed me off, so let's just move on. Move on. A long time ago, in a parish far, far away, it was the 1948 version, there was a great disturbance as the entire Maley storyline was blasted out of existence. Not even Obi-Wan could save Rose from the cutting room floor. Okay, sorry. Alec Guinness is in this one, and I couldn't resist the Jedi mind trick. But we're gonna get back on task. There were a fair few details changed, like after the big robbery, Ollie is brought back to Fagin's, so instead of meeting with Brownlow on the bridge to give info, Nancy is going to bring him Ollie. This isn't the last one to do this change, but it's the first time I saw it done. This also means that Ollie is with everybody else when Sykes shows up at the hideout after he's killed Nancy, and so what he does is he uses Ollie as a hostage to try to get away. Don't worry though, Ollie's fine in the end, and Sykes still hangs himself. They did include the stuff with Ollie's apprenticeship at Sourberry's, but Noah doesn't come to London, so I had to tweak stuff with that. Like, Dodger follows Nancy instead, and you'd think that would bug me, but it actually didn't. Like, we still see the important things that spur Ollie to move forward in his life, with or without that change. And also, the stuff just didn't feel like it would have fit well in this one. I can't explain why, but it just feels like that. I know in other ones it doesn't feel like that for me, even if it's a small change, but this one it just felt okay. I don't know. Finally, Brownlow is Ollie's grandpa again. Most of the changes made sense. Again, they felt good in this version. They didn't feel awkward or anything. However, certain types of movies have rules, and some can bend them, like musicals. They can be over the top in most things and not feel weird, even in a more down-to-earth setting, but this isn't a musical, and the over-the-top mob scenes just felt so weird and out of place. Like, this is supposed to be the middle of the night in a run-down, desolate area. How many people are actually going to come out to get Sykes with the police in an area that's probably inhabited more by people normally targeted by the police? And once again, there was no payoff. The audience knows that Brownlow is his grandpa, so why doesn't Ollie get to know? I've said it before, and I'll say it again, and I'll keep saying it. If you're gonna set it up, finish it. Now, when Sykes has killed Nancy, and the guilt starts to play tricks on his mind, that part was good. End of day, this was a pretty good film. Sykes and Nancy, they were great. Fagin was good, and you know what? Ollie was too. Songs, glorious songs, we're at the musical version. Now, since this is a musical and there are multiple songs that each cover up most a minute's dialogue, it makes more sense than usual to cut stuff out to fit in the main plot. So, monks, melees, all gone. But the usual opener with Ollie's mum was also cut, and the movie starts when he's 9 years old at the workhouse. I mean, that's fine. They made it work really well to get the songs and the longer dance numbers in there, so on balance. Some of the changes they made had Ollie getting shoved into an airtight coffin. Ollie goes off on Noah because he's just slagged off Ollie's mom and they just shove him in there instead of a cupboard or a closet like usual. That didn't sit well with me because if there was some sort of accident on set, there could have been a huge problem. I did like that Dodger and Bates tried to help Ollie get away after the pickpocketing incident instead of just ditching him. It ties back to the song Consider Yourself where they talk about how Ollie is now part of the family. It's nice. And also shows Dodger's quick thinking. Also, Dodger was a kid. And Brownlow. He gives us a reason for taking Ollie in after court. Yes! I mean, it may be a slight departure from the book because Ollie isn't sick. And when this happens, it's usually just, would you like to come home with me, little boy? I mean, has nobody ever heard of stranger danger? But here, he up front says that he wants to make amends for what he put Ollie through. It doesn't feel really creepy or like he's gonna groom the poor kid like in other instances.
Nice looking boy, isn't he?
1948 is knocking, and it's creepy. Now, later Brownlow finds out he's Ollie's grandpa, so there's that. But we have an initial reason here for when he's not sick, and it feels so much better. This is another one where Ollie's brought back to Fagin after the big robbery, so Nancy uses the bridge meeting, coupled with a smart plan on the fly, to get Ollie away and to Brownlow. True to form in these instances, Sykes finds out, kills Nancy, and gets a hold of Ollie to use him as a hostage before he dies. If only Ollie didn't witness not just Sykes' deaths, but Nancy's murder before that. I mean, 2 deaths in one night, that's gonna stick with him. I do like Fagin and Dodger's ending in this. Instead of arrest and gallows and sentences, they walk off into the sunrise to continue on their lives. I think these versions of the characters kind of deserve it. Overall, Oliver was good. The musical numbers are entertaining and made sense. Well, except for one. The big complaint comes up again in this one, though. If you're gonna set up Ollie's family, let us see him happy and finding it out. Give us the payoff! 'Cause they didn't. Again. Nancy was great. Sykes, Ollie, and Dodger were good. And Fagin, yeah, he was pretty okay in this one. Our 7-day walk to London has now brought us to the 1982 adaptation. To start, they kept Rose, but cut most of the rest of the Melee stuff. Rose is Brownlow's niece, but he's not Ollie's grandpa. There were a lot of changes in this one, like, a lot. Some small, like Bates following Nancy and going to Dodger's trial, 'cause holy shit, they actually kept it. But some not so small, like Mrs. Mann, who is actually included, although my excitement abated when Mann and Corny were still rolled into one, just with Corny getting the boot instead. Well, she doesn't even admit to monks. Look at that defining birthmark. Yeah. That she has the locket she stole from Ollie's mum when confronted by him. And some were big, like changing how characters act to some sort of degree. For example, Sykes. He did not put the psych into psycho. He was so muted, and he's supposed to be an intimidating menace, and they just made him a boozer. Like, I don't know how much of it came down to the script, to the director, and as much as it pains me to say it in this case, the actor, but I'm sure they had more than 7 days, and they didn't make Sykes the man he was in the book, and it diminished things. I had to put that reference in, hashtag sorry not sorry. But I am truly sorry to you, Tim Curry. I love you, okay? You are amazing in Rocky Horror, in Clue, and like nobody can hold a candle to your vocal talents in Fern Gully. But your Sykes ain't all that. I'm sorry. On the flip side, the changes to Fagin's character, well, they were well done, and even though he was quite different, he was still able to capture the character. He's more melancholy in this and far more kind. Like, he doesn't threaten Ollie after he's seen him going through his trinkets. He's just kind of waxing poetic about wealth and greed, and he doesn't want to kidnap Ollie back after he's left behind after the robbery at Brownlow's. He believes Ollie should be able to revel in his good fortune, and when the cops are coming to arrest him, what does he do? This.
don't be frightened now. They just want to talk to some of Nancy's friends, that's all this is. They'll probably take me in for questioning. You're on your own now till I get out. You know where to run to. Off you go. Good boy. Up the back. Straight away.
If somebody wants to be cynical about it, yeah. Part of it's probably that generally kids are more likely to talk under pressure, but he didn't have to take the time to tell them that this was nothing to worry about. He could have just been like, get out, with no pretense. I have a lot more I could say, but time is running short. I have 3 more movies to get through, so 2 more things. 1, we get the payoff. The setup with monks, the bumbles, etc., it was all there, and we get to see Ollie happy knowing where he came from. Holy shit! And 2, Dodger, Bates, and Fagin, they were great. Seriously, those 2 kids outshone everybody, including Fagin. But unfortunately, Sykes and Nancy were horrible. Do 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 do. It's time for Oliver and Co. That's right. Disney's 1988 masterpiece, inspired by Oliver Twist. I owned it on VHS as a kid, and I own it on DVD now, so no bias at all. Set in New York City in the 1980s, Disney fucked around with the plot in various aspects, but that's kind of their brand though, so, I don't know. Changes abound, which makes sense, because, most of the main cast are dogs and Ollie's a cat, so they kind of had to change a lot. I mean, Fagin doesn't seem to be a fence in this one, though. He's just a normal human thief in deep with his bookie or his loan shark, who is named Sykes. The bulk of the movie takes place over the span of 3 or 4 days instead of months, and like Jackass, Dodger just uses Ollie to get some food instead of bringing him home. Like, he is an asshole. You're supposed to love him, and while I love his solo song, I don't actually like Dodger in this rendition. I don't. Jenny, who I would say is the Rose counterpart, because she takes Ollie in after a botched job from our merry gang of thieves, gets kidnapped by Sykes. A huge change to the plot, but again, this is Disney's way, and this all makes sense, except for making me hate Dodger, considering, the location and time period. And despite messing with the plot, though, they put in some fun nods to the source material. Like, Ollie is a kitten for sale at the beginning, and there was an advert for Ollie to be apprenticed out, and he went to the Undertaker's, though Kitty Ollie wasn't picked by anybody. They totally included, "Please, sir, I want some more," and the follow from that when Ollie is trying to get sausages and fighting with the cart cook. The song You and Me Together has to be when Ollie spends 3 months with the Mayleys at their country estate, and one of my now favorite moments of this movie is when they send Ollie through a window so he can let them into the building where Jenny is being kept so they can rescue her. In the book, during the big robbery, Sykes puts him through a tiny unbarred window at the Mayleys so he can let them in, but the main thing is he goes through a window to let other people into a building. What this shows is that the creative team at Disney knew enough about the source material for this movie to be able to effectively fuck around and change things, but still keep the heart and soul of the story. Day's End, it's a fun retelling, even though Sykes' death is just as dark as in the novel. Instead of hanging himself, he gets flattened by a subway train going at speed. So there's that. But, the songs, they'll get stuck in your head. Why Should I Worry and Streets of Gold have been living rent-free in my brain since I was about as old as Ollie was in the story. Next is 2005's Oliver Twist. First, a quick look at what they cut out. There's no setup to find out who Ollie's family is, so monks and Mayleys all completely gone. Aside from the usual ripples that come from removing the Mayleys, most of the changes are kind of small. Like, Noah's a little younger, he's supposed to be with Charlotte, but he's a little young for this one. Sykes and Nancy, they stake out Brownlow's after Ollie's sick in court, and he's taken there. Toby Crockett, he doesn't ditch Ollie after things go bust with the robbery at Brownlow's, and so he takes him back to Fagin's. It's mostly, stuff like that. Little things or things we've seen before. As far as accuracy goes, even with taking out the huge chunk of plot, they did that. This one is, it's higher up there. They included things I haven't seen in any other adaptation from these 9. Like, our intro to Noah is pretty much exact. And they kept Gamfield the chimney sweep in. Like, before Sourberry takes Ollie to be a mute, Gamfield wants him, and the people at the workhouse are happy to send him up a chimney, but the magistrates who have to sign off on the apprenticeship say no when Ollie starts to cry and begs not to go with Gamfield. And this scene, it was just plucked straight out the book and plopped onto our screen. But, a big part of the story is the orphan's search for their family and where they come from. So while they didn't need to wrap up that thread, because, you know, it wasn't there, the movie just wasn't as satisfying as it could have been. I mean, yes, I know, in the book he doesn't set out to find his family, but he ends up doing that in a weird twist of fate. In this one, Fagin feels a little more complex. He's by no means the first Fagin to have more complexity. I already talked about the one from 82, and while I don't have time to get into it right now, the Fagin from the Oliver musical, he gets a bit more depth thrown to him as well. But you never fully know where his motivations are coming from in this version. He's got some of that melancholy from the 82 Fagin, but he still does things like try to beat Ollie when he's kidnapped back to the crew, and threatens him when he sees Fagin. Threatens Ollie, I should say, when he sees Fagin with his trinkets. The thing is, though, he shows more kindness and compassion to a degree than in the book. But then you're asking yourself, how much of it is genuine, and how much of it is...
With his face, he could pick out ladies' pockets in church. His face could be a fortune teller.
But then near the end, he tries to shield Ollie from Sykes before Ollie gets taken as a hostage. Like, you don't do that unless you actually care, considering this guy is crazy. Like, I still don't... Like, I don't know. I don't know where Fagin's motivations come from, and that's intriguing, to be honest. But yeah, this was a good one. Sykes, Ollie, and Fagin were great. Nancy and Dodger, they were pretty good too. The last one I was able to find was 2021's Twist. Now, this is a crime drama set in modern-day London, and they fuck with a lot, so this is another one I feel is more inspired by the book rather than a full-on adaptation. In this, Ollie's mom is a painter, and she dies when he's about 9 or 10. As a child, he runs away and seemingly lives rough for most of his childhood. The young cast is completely aged up. The kids are all young adults, which actually fits better for this version, because there is a romance storyline for Ollie that would be kind of weird if he were a little kid. Doc Losburn, a friend of the Mayleys in the book, is in this a douchey art dealer. And if you remember Bumble, one of the assets from the workhouse, you know, he marries Corny, that guy. He's a traffic warden for the city in this. And there's this great part where Ollie, who has become a street artist, kind of in the same vein as Banksy, he paints on Bumble's van when the warden is being a dick to a young mum about a ticket. It kind of goes back to when he's locked in a cupboard at the Sourberry shop and he sasses the fuck out of Bumble, which is one of my favorite exchanges on screen. This made me laugh just as much. It made me think that. And also, I love how the painting aspect of Ollie and his mom's characters were like this awesome nod to the importance of the portrait in the book. And there were a few nods in this. Like, Charlie Bates is almost always laughing and joking in the book, and his counterpart, Batesy, has the jokester vibe about him. You know, you could tell he pulls a few pranks or two. But one of my favorites is when she's pretending to be a cop. Dodge calls herself Officer Dawkins. And yes, I refuse to dodge as she, because she is one of the 3 gender-bent characters in this movie. Dodger and Sykes, both women, and Sykes is still with Nancy, and Bedwin, who was Brownlow's housekeeper in the book, is a man. Now, with this, it would have made more sense if Bedwin were Brownlow's bestie Grimwig, because in this version, Brownlow is a detective inspector, and Bedwin is his suspicious-minded detective sergeant. And in the book, Bedwin is like, oh, Ollie's a good lad, and Grimwig, is the one that's suspicious of Ollie from the off. So it would have made more sense from the base of character aspects. The one note, if you have motion sickness or just don't like heights, there is a little bit during the opening credits where Ollie is free running, and they've like slapped a GoPro or something on him, and so, you know, you kind of get those moments. But it's the only time in the whole movie, and it doesn't last long, so you're good otherwise. Like, even his other free running parts, you don't get that. But yeah, Twist was another fun retelling. All the main characters in the movie had counterparts to their characters in the book, and there were no random additions or anything like that. But like in Oliver and Company, they go off on their own plot. If you've ever seen Hustle, if you're familiar with UK TV, or Leverage for if you're more familiar with American TV, this movie had kind of that vibe. So if either or both of those shows are your jam, then you'll probably like this movie. But what must now be asked is, which is the best? Which is the worst? Could any adaptation be better than the book? Well, in last place, we have the 1909-12 short. Probably not surprised by that. A short can have a cohesive storyline, and this was choppy, and I did not like it. 0 out of 10. Would not recommend unless you want to look at technical aspects of early filming technology. In 8th place is the 1933 adaptation. This strive for accuracy, but also making your own mark at the same time, can indeed go too far. 7th goes to the 1982 version. Yes, there were some good things, but Dodger, Bates, and Fagin, and wrapping up Ollie's familial storyline were not quite enough in the end to bump it higher. It was bogged down by too many lackluster performances, but, you know, Ollie keeping his happy ending was enough to keep it out of 8th place. And then with these three, the book, it was miles better. I had a tough time deciding an order for the next few. I flip-flopped a lot between them, so in equal fourth, because this is my channel, and I am allowed to do that if I want to, we have the films from 1948, 2005, and 2021. They were all good, but not as good as the book, even though they all had great aspects to them. And now, for the top 3, in 3rd place, we have Disney's masterpiece, Oliver and Company. This may surprise you, considering I'm calling it a masterpiece, but as much as I love it, and as much as I think it's as good as the book, and that it's a great way to introduce a kid to the story of Oliver Twist, how the remaining 2 adapted it to their mediums was just... Before I divulge who's on first and what's on second, quick shameless plug. Who was the best Nancy? Who was the worst Ollie? What did I find interesting about Fagin in the musical, and what song from it drove me insane? What are some clever techniques used by early filmmakers, and what bit seemed to inspire parts of Twist? What did other people have to say about what was, in my opinion, the dumpster fire of the 1933 version, and what unrealistic standards is Disney pushing on us in this movie? Well, check out bonus chapters, the Please Say I Want Some More edition, the companion video to this, where I put in things I couldn't quite fit here. It's available today for my members on Buy Me a Coffee. The link to become a member is in the description below. And now, in 2nd place, we have the 1968 musical, which means that to find the best adaptation, we have to literally travel back in time 100 years to 1922. So if you want to watch a version of Oliver Twist that's as good as the book, check out Oliver and Company, Oliver, or number 1 on my list, the 1922 Oliver Twist, and you cannot go wrong. However, none of the movies were better than the book. So, Paige wins today. Maybe next time Screen will win when we fall down the rabbit hole into not 1, but 2 books, Alice in Wonderland and Alice Through the Looking Glass by Lewis Carroll. See you next time, pal.